Hello, Chad. Welcome back to another episode of Lockbox Lunatics Podcast.
Welcome
You
everybody
there?
back to Lockbox Lunatus. How's it going there, Mr. Lambert?
You know what? I'm having quite a good day today. It's been a very, very good day. You
Okay, I
know,
heard you went out and chased a little white ball around this morning.
I did chase the little white ball around this morning, part of my unconventional or conventional way of networking with people in my sphere. I have a wonderful builder with a company called Lexar Homes, Adam Diaz, and so great guy.
Oh,
And so
nice.
we're trying to find a way to do a little bit of business together, and we have a mutual passion for walking around beautiful places and being frustrated. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for today's episode, though. I think we had our first run this last time, kind of
Right.
figured some things out, and I think we had fun though. We had fun.
Oh yeah, we had a good time. And I was checking to see how many viewers we've had. I haven't had a chance to check that out. I know last time I looked, we were around
Come
15.
on, 100,000, 100,000. Okay, shoot.
15,000. I don't know. Yeah, close is somewhere between 0 and 150,000. Real
That's
close.
awesome. I love it. We're getting
Yeah,
closer to our goals. You
Welcome to
have to have
AZ Real
stated
Estate
goals.
101. I'm Chad Camp Broker.
exactly.
We
Exactly.
talk a lot about goals in real estate, you know what I'm saying? And so Chad, you know what? So here's the thing. You and I were talking about this
Welcome to
yesterday.
Okay.
AZ Real Estate
So
101.
here's the thing is that we felt that was kind of a compelling statement, you know,
Right.
well, you said it yesterday, and I kind of picked up and I went kind of hog wild with it. I just behind the scenes, I sent Chad way too many stupid messages about. So here's the thing.
That's all right.
Um, but today we kind of started, the fact that we have our agents that are some are newer, some are more tenured, they're in different stages of their career, and you and I were talking about what do agents need? Like, what do agents really need, to be successful in this business, and what do they really want to be successful? And
Right.
there's a lot of times a big disconnect there. And so you and I were kind of joking and saying, so here's the thing, right? And so we're kind of building off of that a little bit. So that'll be a common kind of refrain during our little session here today.
Right. Yeah, and it stemmed from a conversation I had with a new agent. He's looking for a brokerage, and his idea of a business model was extremely off. When we spoke about it, I know it made sense to him as far as to how to, to get involved in the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely his mindset was still on as an employee as opposed to being self-employed.
Yeah.
It's two different mindsets. You got to understand that you're going to be working for yourself. You're an independent contractor. What Steve and I can do, we can only do so much from a brokerage perspective. We can give specific direction, but we can't give you the self-motivation and the drive. That's something that
Oh
agents,
man, right.
have to dig deep within themselves to ascertain and to pursue. So,
But you hit that on the head. Do you know how many times I love that you bring that up? I love that you bring up the fact that it's an entrepreneur mindset versus or mindset, I should say,
right.
versus a employee mindset. And I think that's a super valid point. I'm really, really glad you brought that up because we hear that so often. I mean, I hear it so often. And I actually see some brokerages out there running ads that make it look like it's an employment opportunity, where they talk about
Mhm.
what you can make and this and that. And I think that creates a little bit of confusion sometimes because, we are independent contractors and we have to get up every day. We wake up every day unemployed. We have to go out and figure out how are we going to best serve our interests in terms of our business, our families, but also our clients, right? So
Right.
there's a multitude of things that we have to consider, both of our internal and external clients, and a lot of agents don't look at that. They're just like, where's my next paycheck coming from? How am I making this deal happen? And and you see a lot of agents that are newer to the business, and even some of those that got lucky. And I use that lightly. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but when the business was super crazy during COVID, I mean, you and I both know I could have put a drawn a sign with crayon that said for sale, stuck it in front of a house, and I had
Right.
15 offers in 20
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
And so but now that time is come and gone and we're moving into that buyer's market now, you have to figure out how do you get things sold and all that. And so really, when we look at agents coming into the business, what are some things that you think, what do you hear that agents want versus what do you think would best serve those agents? What do you think about that?
Right. So, anytime I interview an agent, it's always, leads. right? Are you going to hand me leads? Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, the second thing is going to be, some sort of profit sharing, residual income, which Exit's got the best in the business as far as I'm concerned.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but and they don't understand what a lead is. I always have to explain a lead does not equate to a client. A lead equates to phone calls, follow up, and that's what a lead equates to. And if agents can't produce those leads themselves, they become this is a conversation you and I had months ago, and you made a comment, they become dependent on their broker.
Yeah.
And that's a very good analogy or way to look at it is how dependent do you want to be on somebody for your business? And one
Yes.
thing I've learned is when you're in business for yourself, you don't want to be dependent on anybody except for
Right.
yourself. You do want a collaboration, right? And that's healthy to reach out and get folks to help join you and come up with a common goal. But at the end of the day, like you said, you wake up every day and you're self-employed. You're
Yeah.
unemployed, I mean.
You know,
And
the dependency thing is interesting, right? Because I've talked to
yeah,
a couple of brokers that told me, they said, hey, one of my goals as a way to retain agents, because we know retention's a big deal, is I need to create a little bit of dependency. I don't want them to know how to do everything. And when I heard a broker say that to me a few years
yeah,
back when I was in this business, I like my heart sank a little, you know? I
right,
was like, why would you do that? Why do you want to create that dependency? Um, because you're not fully engaging the capabilities and skill set of that person, right? And so you're right when they sit there and say, "Hey, well, I'm going to feed you these leads." Why my comeback on that one is, so when that person that's feeding those leads, what if when they turn that spigot off and the water stops running? Where are you? Have you built a business, right?
right.
Do you have a business that you feel confident saying, "Oh, I got no worries, I got this," or are you so dependent on that lead stream coming through? And like you said, they're not guaranteed. You know, you can make 100 phone calls to get one client, right? You're dialing for dollars, right? That's the old
Exactly.
phrase in the sales, the kind of the boiler room thing,
Yep.
and it's and I think that a good way to look at that for agents coming into the business is to say, what type of leads can you help me foster or generate or kind of create, right? And what do those leads look like? And am I just throwing money at it and hoping for the best? Am I actually putting together something that's logical but also sustainable? And am I also putting my energy into the right area for those leads, right? Am I actually looking to where I need to go?
Right. And how qualified are those leads? I was,
Yep.
I do new agent trainings, and last week the topic, we were talking about qualifying, leads. And one of the agents said, well, I talked to somebody and they said that they had their cousin that was licensed. And I said, okay, what did you do after that? How did that conversation go? And
Right.
they
Yeah.
just sat there staring at me. And I said, okay, just because they know an agent doesn't mean that they're willing to use them. You have to go to that next step
Yeah.
and say, hey, is that someone that you'd be willing to utilize from a real estate perspective? How active are they in real estate? How much experience do they have? What are they going to be able to do to
Yes.
help move that property? What kind of experience? And there again, it's a new agent, so he's learning. It was a great opportunity for some education. A great teaching moment. But at the end of the day, you have to go through and qualify these folks. Unfortunately, just because you have a lead doesn't mean it's qualified.
Yeah.
If you get a lead, called Daffy Duck, how good is that lead?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, I love when or new agents come in and you can tell me how you answer this one. Why? Because one of my first questions I love to ask people is why real estate? Why
Right.
real estate? I want to make a bunch of money. I mean, I love that answer, and I don't think that's a bad. I don't think it's good for you. I don't think if
Right.
that's what you want to do. But to me, and correct me if you're in your experience, but in my experience level, when I've had agents come in that I've brought on board, and that was their initial answer to that, they failed pretty miserably
Right.
because they lose track of the process and how much work it takes in this business, right? To make a sale, you can get a client. You can work through those leads that we talked about. You can get that client, finally get that buyer or that seller, but you got to get them to the finish line. You have to
Right.
get it done. That's just one part of the process. So I think, when we talk about what best serves agents, they come in with leads, but, we also want to talk to them about, support, training, collaboration, culture. Where are you getting nurtured? And do you have access to people? I know in your area, and we have it here too, not maybe to the depth and breadth that you have, but the discount brokerages that you're kind of fighting, right? And I hear agents come, they're like refugees coming to us from these places, right? They're coming from 100% brokerage or virtual brokerage, and they're just like, dude, I had no support. I was just hanging out on my own. I mean, I was writing deals and going, man, I hope I got it right, and I'm thinking,
Right.
oh my gosh, you're dealing with seven, 800, $900 million purchase and sale here, and you're hoping that it's right. If your client knew that, do you think they would be feel really good about that, right? Because they don't have the support that they need. So it's an interesting thing. So what would you think? What would you say would best serve, like I said, new agent coming in, of those things of like lead, support, training, collaboration, culture? Like what word pops to your mind when you have a new agent coming in and they say, Chad, I want to crush it. What do I need to do? What would you tell them?
Actually, the first word is to be able to take direction. You
Yeah.
know, we give, I know you do as well, but you give specific direction. These agents, they get caught up in training sessions and they're professional students of real estate, which I understand. You have to be a student of the market. You have to be a student of real estate. But in these 100% offices, they'll give opportunities for training. And when the training session is over, they're done with you. The
Yeah.
broker's not following up, holding you accountable, making sure that you're taking the next steps, making sure that you have a full comprehension of what you're supposed to do with that information. And so, especially for newer agents, is to be able to, not only receive training, but understand what I need to do with this training and how to move forward. And most agents lack that direction. And I keep saying specific
Yeah.
direction, but they lack that, and they're learning theories, but they're not learning application of those theories.
Well, let me
And
ask you, how many agents do you think actually do a business plan?
oh yeah, very, very
Like
few,
what percent, right?
very
I mean,
few. Yeah.
people in corporate America hate doing business plans. So when I was in corporate America, we had to do our business plan. I had to do a quarterly, yearly business plan, revisit it every quarter. I had to meet with my superiors and write reports and all this other stuff, figure out if we're on budget, off budget, all that good stuff.
Right.
And I feel that was something that, as much as I hated that, it actually kept me focused and understanding where I needed to go. And it also helped me say, okay, here's my goals. And I'm actually even, am I tracking it all? And it's fascinating because we have weekly meetings where we run all these numbers, and I know you do the same. And it's very interesting because if you kind of like man on the street or whatever, a person on the street, and you ask an agent, just any agent, any company, what's are they hitting their goals for the year? Are you on track? Are you tracking for your goals? I would say it's probably about 2% that actually can give you any kind of semblance of an answer, right?
Right.
And I feel like as an industry, we need to do way better than that, right? We need to have the consummate professionals that really understand where to go. And that's where I think newer agents, like you said, when they're coming in, they're like, well, I want low splits, I want profit sharing, I want this, and I want that. And I'm like, hey, time out. That stuff's all awesome. And I love you for that. High five. But are you going to actually build a business that's going to allow you to stay in this business long enough to where things like that actually matter? Because
Right.
profit sharing doesn't matter if you're in the business for 8 months. Stock options don't matter if you're in the business for 8 months, right?
Yep.
None of low splits don't matter. If you're not doing deals, who cares what your split is? You did one deal, that's great. You're at a 90-10. Hot dog, you did one deal. I'll tell you what, I'd take 10 deals at a 50-50 all day long versus a 90-10 for one deal, right? I'm making a
Exactly.
heck of a lot more money and I'm
Yeah.
in the business, right? And so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of misnomers and people get very distracted and potentially focused on the wrong things. And I think that's just messaging, really,
Yeah, and what it boils down to is a lack of confidence on the agent's part with regards to, they're so worried about, okay, how am I gonna, what's this gonna cost me?
Mhm.
And they're confident, they have no confidence in their abilities. I spoke with an agent, goodness, 2 years ago, and he was pretty active in the industry. And we went over to the splits, and he's like, "This, I don't care about the splits. I'll make enough money. That's not going to be an issue." And so he ended up not coming on board with me because his wife had some medical issues, and so he paused his moving. But that impressed me. It literally was either the first or second interview once I opened up my exit office and tried to start growing it.
Yeah,
It was, I don't care what your splits are because I'm going to make so much money. That's going to be minuscule, right?
yeah,
And so when you have an agent so worried about their budget, now don't get me wrong, you have to have a budget. You have to live
Oh
within
yeah,
your budget,
yeah,
especially if you're just
100%.
starting out or you're trying to get to the next level. But you've got to look at, okay, what am I willing to invest in myself to be able to get to that next level?
Right,
And with these discount brokerages, the investment is zero. You're not
right.
investing. That broker is investing nothing in you because what's he getting from you?
Not much, right? I
How
tell
much?
people that I'm like, my first question to a business that says, you're going to work with me, I'm going to provide you platforms and tools and all that, and we don't charge any fees. First question I ask is, I'm
Yeah,
like, one, can you tell me then how your business model works for you to keep all this going? Because if
right.
I'm not paying you, if I'm understanding you correctly, I'm at 100%, which we know is not true.
Right.
Uh, how do you keep the doors open? Because I could sit there and say, hey, Chad, I guess what? I'm excited. I opened up an exit franchise today and I charge nobody anything. I have rent to pay, I have utilities to pay, and I have myself to pay, and I have like printers and really cool marketing materials and all this stuff,
Insurance and yep,
insurance and all that.
utilities.
And I
Yep.
charge nothing. And you're going to say, cool, Steve, did you just win $1 billion in the lottery? And you're being like, you're just very giving right now. Cause tell me from a
Yeah.
business perspective, how are you paying for that? Oh, well, I have fees. Oh, I thought you don't have, you're 100%. There's no, well, I have
Yeah.
fees, right? And the
Let me ask
fees,
you, so
they add
so
up.
when you align yourself with someone, do you want to align yourself with, a business person that understands how to run a business, or do you want to align yourself? I'm not talking bad about charities, but you
Sure.
want to align yourself with charities. If you want to run your business as a charity, by all
Mhm.
means,
Yeah,
you hook that, align yourself with someone who is looking at their business as a charity.
exactly. Yeah.
If you're looking at someone who, if you're wanting to grow a business, you've got to get around those that have that business mindset,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that was this conversation I had the other day. It was, you've got to look at growing your business, not somebody else's business. And you need to align yourself with someone who's going to show you how to have that business mindset. And when something doesn't sound right, you need to be able to listen to that guidance that someone's giving you,
Oh, yeah.
no
Yeah.
matter no matter how harsh it may seem.
Yeah. That's
Um,
what I love about what we have collaboration. Like you and I talk a lot about this, outside of this, a lot about business and
oh
questions on
yeah,
business, things like that. And I'm hoping for our, 0 to 150,000 people out there potentially listening to this that feel free to put some stuff down in the comments, ask us questions so that we can bring them up on the next episode. Maybe you have questions about what you're trying to figure out or how you're trying to decipher what to do in the real estate industry or where to go with your career. And keep in mind, there's so many things that you can do within this industry. It's not just hanging signs. I mean, you've
right,
got the commercial, you got the investing side of it, you got repos, you got all kinds. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go in this business. You've got the development side on it. You've got taking builders and helping them come with their marketing plans and taking them from a one or twosies to like where they're doing 20 or 30 a year. And you get to align and grow with that. And you can learn so much, but you have to have a brokerage that can help, like you're saying, support you with that growth by answering those questions or understand where to find that information because it's critical that you're doing it right. One, it's a fiduciary responsibility to your clients. Two, and three, you have a ton of just liability to make sure that you're doing everything right. There's, you and I are both aware of this. We've seen lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit of people doing what they thought was really cool stuff, just completely out of their mind,
right,
out of their mind. And that's where the name comes from sometimes, because every now and then we want to pull some of the absolute lunatic things that go on in this business. And I would say, like we talked about last episode a little bit with the commission whole thing that's gone on with that. It's become Wild West more than it's ever been. It's very fascinating right now. There's some wonky stuff going on out there, man.
yes, there is,
And I'm watching agents where they're doing some things, and I'm like, just want to bury my head because I'm just going, oh my gosh, you're opening yourself up to a world of hurt right now. But
right.
not within our brokerage. We train the heck out of people, um, but I like that though. I think that you know getting a message out there for agents to ask things a little bit differently, align themselves truly with where the value and culture is, is going to be best serving them at the end of the day, whether it's us or another brokerage, obviously. So,
Right. Yeah, and it's having the right questions to ask,
yes,
and if you want to find out, some of the best questions to ask is, talk to a performing agent, an agent that's
right.
been in the
Yeah,
business and that's been
exactly.
performing. And if they'll be honest with you, ask them, how much have you been able to rely on your broker to help you succeed? And if that answer is I rely heavily on my broker. Rely heavily on the tools, the technology that's given, versus I don't rely on that broker whatsoever. Then they're an island unto themselves. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and some agents, I'll be honest with you, I was an island unto myself for years
Oh
because
yeah.
I didn't have the support, and I knew I didn't have the support, and I knew if I had a question, I was not going to get an immediate answer because I was in 100% officer for a while,
Yeah.
and I knew I wasn't going to be responded to. And I had to make an appointment. Fortunately, it wasn't online to where I had to go into a little
Get your avatar.
anime avatar. Yeah, a little avatar go in a room.
You
Uh,
know, you're the classic lone wolf, which there's a lot of those in the real estate business. There's a lot of lone wolves in the real estate. I was the same way. I was like, there's nothing that I need to know because I came from a professional sales background. I was in pharmaceutical sales. I was a detail guy. Then I did medical device stuff or supplies, I should say. The bottom line is that I felt like there's nothing you can teach me that I don't already know.
yeah,
Boy, did I get into a world of hurt. Real estate is a completely different animal, and you have to have a strong support system and training and people behind you and the tech and tools to be able to make this fly, to make it happen. So,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So we're getting along on our time
We
here.
are.
So here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Cheeseburgers or steak? Which one?
That's a great question. I'm going to go with, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because I've got a lot of friends that are in the has ranches, but I'm gonna go with cheeseburger. I've got a buddy that's gonna be severely disappointed that I didn't say steak.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, it depends on the day. I'm
Yes.
not gonna hate. I'm not gonna hate that answer. I love a good cheeseburger, but I love a great steak.
Well,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah, actually, we had steak last night, and it just melted in my mouth. My
know.
daughter.
I did the same thing. I used the Traeger last night. I did a
Oh,
little
did you? No, my daughter cooked for us.
oh,
She
even
cooks quite a
better.
bit. She loves to bake and things. But yeah, the steak was phenomenal last night. So last night we needed no extra. We needed no A1 sauce or anything. It was
Oh man,
phenomenal.
I love that. All right, well, down in the below for anybody that wants to comment or try to make some kind of comments on this thing, we want to hear if you're a newer agent or you're a tenured agent, what do you think best serves you and your business? And also steak or cheeseburger.
All right, steak or
Let us
cheese.
know. Let us
All
know.
right.
Give us so yours. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And again,
Heck
like
yeah.
Steve said, if you have any comments or suggestions on any topics to cover, by all means, throw those in the comments. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you can kind of stay up to date
Yes.
on whenever we update these. They'll be updated on Fridays.
Heck yeah. Let's do this. Woo!
All right. Everyone take care. We'll catch you next
All
week.
right. See ya. Bye.